Yeah.
Oh my
And,
God.
and on that note, yes, because it is illegal to record without notifying people in the state of Florida.
Leo does that to Dahlia all the time. Am I muted?
Hey
No,
YouTube, what's
we should
up?
be muted.
All
Yeah.
right, so we are back with we're starting chapter 3. We just finished chapter 2, which gave a little bit of insight into when a person wants to actually, as they say, a student's first steps towards change. When a person wants to actually get going in their life, right? What is the mindset? What is the attitude? How does a person conduct themselves? So we're gonna deep dive into that in a little bit. Um, but we have to be able to focus right on the positive and the negative. Now, I want to start off today before diving in, before we talk about what we call machoilas hanefesh, the diseases of the soul and their roots, the ikarim of them, that we have to be responsible with understanding our deficiencies. What do I mean? It means that sometimes people misunderstand the things that are wrong with them. Everybody has something that's wrong with them. You have negative midos, and the reason you do is because Hashem planted them inside of you. When we're not responsible and we're confused about that, we start to identify those bad things and we start to look lowly of ourselves. And we can't do that. We have to recognize that Hashem puts good and powerful traits and midos inside of us to use as tools to conquer the world. And right, it was interesting. I said that. I'm like, wow, someone gets their hands on that to conquer the world for the sake of Hashem, to be able to spread, to elaborate, to spread the light of Hashem throughout the entire world as the ambassadors of God. And Hashem also put negative things inside of us. So when a person is sitting there and they're like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong? Why do I do that? Why do I have those elements? Because Hashem put it inside of you. That's a part of you. And your job is to overcome those things. You were not born perfect. You were born imperfect. And your job is to perfect yourself. And if you have nothing wrong with you, you have nothing to perfect. Okay. So we have to be responsible with understanding why we have negative things inside of us in the first place. Okay. There is people who are naturally angry. There are people who are naturally jealous. There are people who are naturally lazy or lethargic, right? There are things inside of you that are inherent. It's part of your personality. It's part of negative character traits, and they're not you. They were placed inside of you by Hashem, and your job is to work on them. So you just have to recognize where those come from. Now, whenever, as a general rule, if you're a growth-oriented person, when we talk about something that's negative, when we talk about a deficiency, when we talk about a bad midah, they're spectrums. It's not as simple as either you have it or you don't have it. Everybody gets angry. Everybody gets jealous. And it's just basic, but we have sometimes, right? Sometimes we have a predisposition there. It's woo, right? Sometimes it's way, very, very intense. Someone's like I don't struggle with that so much. Doesn't mean you don't have it. But a growth-oriented person, when learning about a negative midah or negative character trait, will stop and they will do a what we call a cheshbon nefesh. They'll look at themselves and they'll evaluate themselves to say, where does this exist inside of me? If somebody were to say, oh, I don't have that issue, so I just brush it off, and then they have a total lack of zahiros, of self-awareness towards that, that's very, like, oh, I don't struggle with honor, with kavod. That doesn't affect me at all. Boom. And then like it starts to creep in. Then the Yetzer Hara goes, oh, you think you don't struggle with arrogance and humility? Watch, I'm going to show you how that's a problem. So a person always has to be aware, all right, and they have to always know where they are on that spectrum and make sure that they're keeping themselves in check so that they don't lose themselves. So let's dive in. Right? The main spiritual diseases and their cures, the way that we're able to fix them. We're on page 81. Since our entire goal is to bring you closer to Torah and the path of Hashem, we've prepared you in the very way that Torah has commanded us. Turn from evil and do good. This is one of the greatest lines of David HaMelech when it comes to working on yourself that we ever see. Right? Sur me'ra v'yaseh tov. That a person needs to turn away from bad to do good. These are two independent things. Sometimes, right, and they have to complement each other. If you do one without the other, right, it's not merely enough to sit on the couch and be like, I'm not murdering anyone today. It's an extreme example. But if somebody, for example, is now working on themselves and they're taking on things, of course, that's a good thing. However, if you're not working on those negative things, then you're just tainting them, as the example he'll use in a moment. But also the order in which he says it, sor merav tov, meaning turn away from bad and then proactively do good. What I would suggest, and I think the Piazetzer is going to say that they're of equal importance, but I really do think that personally that a person has to stop negative behavior. And we see that when it comes to teshuva as well. That a person does have to sor meirah. You have to turn away from the evil. It's very weird to work on yourself while you're still engaged in the thing that's problematic. Right? But these are two independent things. Just because I'm working on this doesn't mean that I'm naturally going to stop that. You get what I'm saying? Some people are confused about that. They think that, hey, oh, I'm working on this. Oh, so then all my negativity, my bad character traits are going to vanish by themselves. No, that's not how that works. Just as one cannot usher in a king into a room that has not been cleaned, one cannot make himself holy before he has removed the bad qualities from his heart. Right? If you didn't clean up the room and the room looks like a mess, if you bring in royalty, you bring in a king, he's gonna walk in there and be like, "This is disgusting. This is not fit for a king." So when you're bringing kedusha into your life and you're bringing positive things into your life, let's use anger as an example because I think that's a midah that can be extremely self-destructive. Right? It can destroy almost anything. If a person, right, is building relationships a positive thing? Of course it is, right? Relationships are extremely positive, the kamocha and unity, right? And kishachad v'lein. We're all supposed to be united as one. Of course, that's our goal. That's what we're trying to do. But if a person has anger problems and they struggle with anger and they don't address them, they don't look at that, what will end up happening is all the relationships they're proactively trying to build can get tainted, ruined, destroyed by the person's anger, right? Is getting married a mitzvah? Sure, it's getting married is a mitzvah. When a person has anger issues and they haven't worked on their anger, right? Then what's going to happen is when they go into their marriage, they're going to lash out and they're going to affect their marriage essentially, right? So a person does need to focus on those deficiencies, right? Before, or at least simultaneously while working on the good. Therefore, we must, hey Shira, therefore we must search within you for the even slightest of deficiency which might hinder your ability to learn and be able to come close to Hashem and remove them. And this, of course, goes back to self-awareness, Zahiros. If a person is constantly probing himself, looking at yourself and saying, okay, where are my deficiencies? You're talking to your mentors and saying, okay, where do I struggle? Catching yourself when you have a weak moment, right? You can be somebody who's not typically a jealous person, but if you have a jealous moment and you just say to yourself, oh, uh, whatever. Everybody makes mistakes. No, stop for a moment and be like, okay, I'll take it one step further, right? That there is um, I'll say it for myself as a personal thing, right? I don't get told I'm fake a lot. I get, I can think on like one hand of the times that people have said that to me. I don't carry myself that way. I typically I'm not known for such things. And yet, okay, somebody comes along and says, "Oh my God, you're so fake," right? So in my heart, I know when I'm being authentic. I know that I'm being genuine. But even so, just as a common practice, I'll stop and I'll listen to it. And the person will say, okay, they don't even know me. I don't know what they're saying or why they're saying that, whatever. But even so, I strive and want to be the type of person that stops for a moment and says, okay, is there any element of the way that I presented myself that is insincere, even for, a moment? That's the way that I want to try to be. Why? Because a growth-oriented person should be able to do that, right? They're able to find within themselves the little deficiencies. Throwback to last year, learning Mesilas Yesharim when he's talking about Nikios of cleanliness, the midah of being Nikios. He says even those little tiny little things, the things that are not like, oh, they're not so wrong, they're like quasi wrong. It's not a big deal. It's very easily overlooked. No one's going to pay attention. Yada yada yada. It's those things, right, that a person has to really go and uproot because that's the source. You can be chopping off branches, but you got to go at the root of certain things. So a person does have to look inside themselves and say, okay, what is truly wrong with me? Where are my deficiencies that I need to uproot and take care of? But this has to be a joint effort. Shkoyach. Together we must search and examine in order to find every crumb of spiritual chametz. I love the reference there. Every tiny aspect of spiritual rot and destroy it. Throw back to Bedikas Chametz. When your person is searching their house for chametz before Pesach, you have to search every crack and crevice, and you're looking for all of it, right? And what do you do when you find it? You destroy it. Why? Because you don't coexist with cancer. You don't say to yourself, okay, this is something that's terrible and awful, and it'll destroy everything in my life. I have severe deficiencies in this area, but I learned to manage it. No, you take it and you destroy it. We take the chametz, we go outside and we burn it. So I like the reference because it's literally what chametz is symbolic of chet, of sin. So a person has to find that sinfulness inside themselves. And again, not in what they do, but in terms of using the reference of their midos, of the deficiencies that God put in them, and they have to find them, they have to uproot them, right? And try to get them out. It can only be done when a person has a keen sense of self-awareness. And then he goes on to say, for who is your main educator if not yourself? Right? Hence, I don't know if he think I learned this enough times to know if he quotes the Mishnah on Avos in Parak Aleph, Mishnah 14. Um, okay, I don't know if he does or not, but in Ein Ani Li Mili, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Right? That at the end of the day, and just remember this, there is no one in this world who is more responsible for your own character development and your own success other than you. No one. No one, no one, no one. And I'm extremely critical of the generation we live in today that tries to absolve themselves and say that all my deficiencies is everyone else's fault. It is disgusting, gross attitude. It is self-destructive. This, you know, this perpetual victimization of constantly about everyone's wronged me and that's why I am the way that I am. That's not to whitewash people doing you wrong, but at the end of the day, right, to sit there and say, "Oh, I'm this way because my parents are this way," or my favorite example, when the really morally underdeveloped, teenager goes like, "Oh, that's just the way that I am." They blame God essentially. They're like, "Oh, God made me this way, so I can be rude," or it can be like, "Yeah, that's just how I am." It's like, who's in charge of how you are? You're acting rude, and you're saying you're using the excuse that that's just how I am. It's horrible. You know what I mean? If you ever met these people, they're like not the type of people you want to be particularly close with for good reason. But there is nobody who is more in charge of your own growth and your spiritual development than yourself. What if it's actually true though, and you're able to recognize where it comes from? This is the difference between personality and character. You have a personality. You have character traits that you did not choose. Yes, Hashem might have gave you a disposition towards being angry or lazy or jealous. That's fine. But he gave within your means and he gave you a mandate to work on yourself. And if you're not doing that, you have no one else to blame. You can't say that the fact that it exists in and of itself is a reason of why I can exercise and I don't have to work on it. That's what I'm talking about. Person who says, "Oh, this is my personality, so just the way it is." If your personality, you have a disposition to do things that are wrong, stop it. Work on yourself. Don't do that anymore, But to then say, "Oh no, this is who I am, so I'm just going to run with it my whole life," that's terrible. No, character. Your person has the ability to be able to become anything they want to be and to work on those things. Sorme Rav Yasei Tov. That's one of the things we're meant to do with our lives, specifically. Who bears the primary responsibility for educating the Jewish youth and raising them to greatness, mighty in Torah, if not the youth themselves? And whose job is it? Who has the ability to recognize your fault that need to be corrected as you do? And that's also an incredible point. Something that's also not so common. It's very interesting when I I'll sit in an interview with two best friends or siblings or whatever it is. Oftentimes, and you might feel this about yourself, you know your best friend better than you know you, right? You ask somebody a question like, "Okay, name 5 things that make you special," and they're like, "Oh, I don't know." And then you say, "Okay, fine. Name 5 things that your best friend would say is special about you," and then it's like, "Oh, they would say this, 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 this." Oftentimes, right, we're able to do that. And you see it in relationships as well. We're able to give way better relationship advice to other people, but when it comes to ourselves, we don't know what we're doing very often. Why? Because we have more observation for other people. We don't realize that we need to have the same level of observation for ourselves. The potential to know yourself lies within you greater than anybody else in the world. How do I know? Because you're with yourself 24/7. So if you were observing another human being for 24/7, you would know a lot about them, a lot more than anybody else, right? So if you're observing yourself 24/7, you're locked into your life and you have Zahiros and you ask yourselves those questions of, why did I feel that way? Why did I respond that way? Why do I act this way? Why do I speak this way? And you start to learn about yourself. If a person observes themselves, right? So the potential to know yourself is greater than anyone else's potential, period.
Obviously.
Potential in the same way, just this point, and then 1 second, is that the Jewish people can be closer to Hashem than any other nation. That doesn't mean that Jews are. You think Bernie Sanders is closer to Hashem than you know, I don't know, your average, than Mike Huckabee? No, of course not. Of course not. So in the same way, you have the potential to know yourself better than anybody else. It doesn't mean that that's a reality. Yeah, Rihanna.
I think like it is a reality, just people don't want to be like people aren't aware of it or like I don't want to be, but like deep down, like everyone is more aware of like every part of yourself
You have to
more.
work on it. Self-awareness is not a given.
I'm saying, isn't that like a natural thing that like
Hmm.
you can know you're doing it, but like yeah, there's excuses your brain will make up just to make yourself feel better, whatever it is.
There,
But like deep
denial
down,
is real. No, denial is real. Denial's real. You know what happens when you do that, by the way? When you lay in bed at night and you're like deep down, you're like, oh, you know what you did was messed up, but then you don't even address it with yourself. You bury it inside yourself. You give it a few years and that'll just become who you are. You know, you ever meet adults? I mean, I meet plenty of adults like this who are so disconnected from reality. They just live in a fantasy land. And the reason is because they didn't work on themselves when they were younger. If they have negative midos, what does that mean? They didn't work on themselves when they were your age. And now they're a miserable adult who they're trapped, right? You
You
can't even
don't
judge
think
them.
that they do know, they just like, for example, you said they're too like
No,
far in of like
no, I have lists and lists of adults who are so disconnected from their own reality because they never decided to pay attention in the first place. It's not a given. Denial is real. A person, you know, like they said, when a person wants self-help, you know, the 12 said the first step is admitting that there's a mistake in a problem. That's self-awareness. If you can't admit that you have a deficiency, if you can't even see the rot inside of you, Rihanna, let's use it as an example, right? If I went through every single kid on TJJ, I could highlight the things that's wrong with them. You think how many of those kids think how many of them are aware of those deficiencies inside themselves? Probably not a lot of them. I literally went over to a girl, I was just like, you know, you really do talk a lot. And they go, me? And I'm like, are we living in the twilight zone? Like you don't realize how much like lush and horror you're spewing all the time? Like how like disconnected from yourself are you? It's crazy. So the potential is there, but it's definitely not a given. Yes, I do think that there is that Yetzer Tov inside a person that can get, but you can bury that. You can totally bury that and get rid of it. But being self-aware as a hero is a proactive thing to get to know yourself, to learn about yourself. Get asked those whys. Every time you have an emotional reaction, do you stop and ask, why did I have that emotional reaction? What's at the root cause? Why did I act that way? Most people don't do that. Most of us who
But
do
there's
do
times where I'm like, oh, like I can like capture myself, but like continue anyways and whatever. Like the wrong, like oh wait, this is whatever. But like I still have the awareness it's wrong, but now
So
I'm just
so
like using an excuse.
if you don't do anything about it over time, it will go away. And you will totally give yourself to your Yetzer Hara. They will be in the driver's seat of your life, and you'll lose the ability to be able to catch that. It's just a matter of time. You can condition yourself in any which way. Being inactive, when Hashem wants you to be proactive about working on yourself, being inactive will just have you concretize yourself into a negative way. And that's very scary.
Sounds pretty scary.
It is very scary. And that's why we have again, Hashem gives us a mandate that we have to actually take this serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? You have the potential. Yeah, Danielle.
How do you know like the difference between like working on yourself and actually getting over things or like shoving it down and like thinking that it goes away when it really doesn't?
Because you'll notice a change.
No,
You'll
but like how do you know what works? Like which is how do you know what to do?
What do you mean, like the method? How do you work on yourself?
Yeah, like
That
what
that's
and
what this chapter is going to present strategies. They're going to present strategies and ways, methodologies for a person to practically work on themselves and how to grow. But the way to take a test, like check your pulse kind of thing, is that right? If you want to try to, if you say, okay, this is my mission, I want to work on this specific thing, right? After a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, anything, you're able to stop, turn around, and look at your progress and say, oh my God, I'm actually, I do it a lot less. People are noticing. I'm noticing. You can be able to check in with yourself and see, hey, I'm actually doing a really good job, right? And then you get more powerful, and then you have the strength to be able to overcome it. Hold your tongue every time you want to say something or do something negative. You know what I mean? So that's pretty cool. All right. So he says like this, and who like you is so well aware at the top of page 83 now of the spiritual distortions which vary from one person to the next and of the ways in which they can be straightened out. Obviously, you. All we can do is help you and prepare you on the proper path for you. All we can do is tell you this approach, these paths are and byways are crooked. They lead to those who choose to follow them straight to Gehenna, the Sitra Achra, and Rahman al. And conversely, we can point out to you the straight path that leads figuratively to Hashem's outstretched arm and his splendid glory. And he's making a great point over here. You want to know what the role of a parent, of a Rebbe, of a Rebbitzin, of your mentor, of your advisor, anybody that you look up to, what their role is to open doors and point, right? That's literally what my role is. I'm going to go there and be like, hey, by the way, this is the path to greatness and success, battle tested and proven. I don't walk the line. Nobody does. That's I always make that like caveat when you get up at the end of the, a spring regional, like, oh my God, you changed my life. It's like, where's your credit? I didn't go through the hardship and the struggle. It's very easy for me to sit where I am and give guidance and advice and direction. But to do the thing, that's you. That's you. It's not other people. And you have to realize that. Again, it works in the positive and the negative. Right? Some people are super, super attached to their mentors and realize like, I always say this, if I had the ability to make decisions for other people, if I had the ability to take certain steps, oh, we'd be doing so much better. It's so easy for me. I'd sit there and I go, okay, I'm going to have this entire high school. They're all going to go down the right path. Great. So it's just not how it works. I don't get to make decisions for people. People make their own decisions. Only you can make that decision. Right. And on the extreme opposite of the negative, when people blame other people, they say it's because of this and that. It's because the rich people, it's capitalism, it's because of the government, it's because of blah, 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 my skin color, like all these things, right? It's their fault. And therefore I'm not going to thrive and succeed in life. And it's like, shut up already. Stop, like get up and go do, move forward. Stop, fall into this victimist cycle. It's when a person tries to offshoot their own responsibility. You are the primary person who's responsible. Any guidance you want to get, help, mentorship, and yeah, some people are low at a certain point in life and they need somebody to lift them up. And that's awesome. And that's the role of a mentor. But at the end of the day, it is you who has to take that decision to step forward. That's the point he's making. The most that any father, teacher, or counselor can do is direct you and advise you. Whether or not you listen to them and act and train yourself according to their direction is entirely up to you. You have to decide if you're going to internalize it, their each and every word to your benefit, right? The influence of people that have on you is only to your choice, right? And that's, by the way, that's why if you remember the Silcha Rav Shir in TGJ, we don't go around making ourselves mentors to anybody. The process is bottom up. You go around and saying, hey, I want you to be an influence in my life. I want you to be one of my spiritual guidance people. I want you, not people coming around telling you what to do. You choose the advice you want to listen to. You choose who you want to guide you, and then you choose whether or not you want to listen to their advice. Right? If I gave you, so you came to me for advice and I gave you advice and you chose the other thing, what am I going to sit there and be mad at you? Like, oh, you didn't listen. No, like you're going to do whatever you're going to do. Your job is just to educate. You take that with you and you do with it what you will. But the more responsibility you take for your own life, the closer you are to success just for that recognition of reality. Because I think that whole concept is coming under attack in America and it's like really repulsive. And if you, God forbid, decide to resist and rebel, who and what will save you from those powers that are ready to grab the Jewish soul because and cause it to sin, Rahman al. Only you can search the cracks and crevices of your heart and soul in order to find your individual flaws and remedies for them. In the following chapters, we'll mention just a few spiritual diseases and their cures, and it'll be up to you to learn from them how to search, find, and correct your own personal deficiencies. Character development could be, I could be your cheerleader. You can do it with your friend as moral support. But at the end of the day, it's your mission, your path, your mission, your mountain to climb. Nobody else's. There are people, both great and small, who do not feel that they are lacking in any way, which is a terrible, terrible midah. Even if they read the Musar Svarim, like books like this, or Mesilas Yesharim, or Igeret Rambam, there are certain negative character traits. It does not occur to them that they themselves possess those traits, and they are responsible for rectifying them. It's really amazing. It's also, think about it. You can come in and you can talk to a whole group of teenagers and you can talk to them about a specific topic and they can be sitting there and they can be nodding their head and be like, yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And like they can be guilty of that very thing and they have just no idea. And actually, it's a throwback to 2018. We went to Kfar Kedem on TJJ and I docked 3 kids because there were 3 kids who consistently were harming the group by being selfish, not showing up on time, doing their own thing, not being mindful, not caring about the collective group. They were constantly doing their own things and they had no care in the world for the rest of the kids there. And if you know me and you know how we roll, I can't stand that, right? There has to be social responsibility. So I docked the 3 of them from Kfar Kedem, the donkey riding, and we're sitting down there. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to stay with you guys. I'm like, oh, while we're here, why don't we learn? And I pick up this sefer and I open to chapter 6, which talks about egoism. and what the effects that an ego can have on somebody. And we're learning it and they're getting into it and they're loving it and they're like, yeah, those people suck. Yeah. It never occurred to them for 45 minutes that I literally, why did I choose this topic of all things? Because of you. Like I'm literally talking about, and I just couldn't, I didn't say anything. I just kept learning and because they were so into it and it just blew my mind. It was like, there was like, they didn't realize how selfish they were. They're confused as to why they couldn't go on the donkey. Like it's wild. So at the end of the day, there are people like that in the world, and it's really scary. You don't want to ever fall into that category. Within their hearts, they feel no pain, no concern, and this is not a good sign. Where it's like a person who's sick, whose disease is so severe, yet he remains totally unaware of it. He has no clue. He has no idea that he's even sick. Right? There's like a cancer brewing. Again, let's just talk about anger. Somebody has anger issues and they have no idea about it. They have no clue. There's literally a cancer brewing inside of them that's just going to get stronger over the years, affect their life negatively, and they're going to harm the people that they love because they have no control over it because they're giving it sunlight and water and saying nice things to it, and it's growing, and they have no idea. They don't even realize that they're sick. Then there are people who are slightly different, right? So I don't think anybody here falls into that category at all. Finish the chapter. There are those people on a slightly different level. Deep within their hearts, they do feel pain, concern over their faults, but their intellect quickly inverts with excuses. I may possess these negative character traits, but not to the extent that the Sefer describes. The small traits that I have must be there, because after all, the Torah says that everybody has faults, and there's no such thing as a tzaddik who does only good in this world and doesn't sin. This attitude, too, is the Yetzer Hara's partner, and it leads to nothing but spiritual rot and darkness again. And what is this example that he's talking about? Okay, I don't think anybody here is in the first category. Someone who's so totally checked out and oblivious. The next one is when a person does recognize their faults, right? It does like, oh, I caught it. Like, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. But then right away, you bring in the intellect, right? Now we're going to start to rationalize what we did wrong. Ah, perfect. I know I just lashed out and yelled at my parents, but they deserved it because if not, yeah, you ever like, I love when people are like, they tell me how they need to like teach their sibling a lesson or they need to teach their friend. They need to do it because if not, then who's going to be the one to it's like shut up, like we put you here so you're going to go around mustering everybody. It's a cover up for doing something you shouldn't have done. You know what I mean? Like when you start to bring in your intellect, they say that's the agent of the Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara is going to come and give a rational explanation of why what the wrong thing that you did is okay. And we have to be very careful about that as well, because where do you draw the line? We're if that's what we're doing, where we're just going to rationalize and get ourselves off the hook every single time because there's a clause there, right? Oh, but they did it first. Well, if they did it first, then green light to me, right? It's like, who said that that's okay? So that's the second category where a person is able to catch these deficiencies, negative character traits inside themselves, but they get themselves off the hook because in comes the rationale. In comes the intellect. The basic underpinning of these attitudes is that a people are not used to demanding greatness from themselves. And this is an insane line, right? This is an incredible line. This is an insane line because what is he saying here? This totally flips it on its head. This is where I love this. Like we'll transfer from Musar straight to Hasidus right over here. He's saying, and it's amazing, way before all the modern psychologists could come up with this, he's saying, what's the root of why people are doing this? The real root is that people are trying to be defensive towards their sins. Why? Because they have low self-esteem. And it's really an astonishing thing, right? And you have to think about it for a little bit. He's saying that we don't demand greatness of ourselves. Why? Because if you don't think you're all that great, then why should you demand that I should do better? Why are you trying to create rationale? Because you want to feel even more negative about yourself, right? If a person is healthy and confident in themselves and they mess up, they'll have no problem just calling a spade and be like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. That was really dumb. I should not have said that. I was upset and I said that and I shouldn't have said that. If you can't do that, it's because there is extreme insecurity there and a low self-esteem. And he's bringing it right out. People are not used to demanding greatness of themselves. If you thought of yourself as great and you held yourself to that standard, making mistakes are inevitable for sure, but that's not an excuse, right? Of course, that famous, it's highlighted in Rashi. I believe Shlomo Melech's original, says that no, there's no such thing as a person who doesn't sin in this world. Okay, great. So now if you take that pasuk, which is true, and you say to yourself, okay, so I'm off the hook because after all, I'm just sinning, versus recognizing your sin and saying, this is beneath me. I shouldn't be doing that. I should be doing better. You'll come to find, especially as we learn this safer, that at the root of everything is like if you have a healthy self-esteem, right? If you have a good understanding of who you are and you can demand greatness of yourself and you realize that you're special, then a lot of this stuff is very easy to come at. But that's what he says, which is again, it's just a brilliant. It's like sort of like comes out of nowhere. You're like, huh? That's why I do that? Yeah, because people are not used to demanding greatness from themselves. They think that only great tzaddikim need to work on themselves and their self-improvement. Regular people are just fine the way they are. This is similar to a man who has a son of limited intellectual capabilities. He doesn't expect much from him, and therefore he's satisfied with little good his son manages to accomplish. The father even finds excuses for his son's misdeeds. After all, his son is intellectually impotent. Now, again, we hold other people to certain standards. You look at your advisors and your teachers, and you're like, yeah, they have to because that's them. What's the difference between their neshama and yours? Right? If you saw the rabbi of your shul, you saw the rav of your community, you walked by a McDonald's on Yom Kippur and you saw them sitting there, you know, going ham on a cheeseburger, right? Like you'd be like, what on earth? And if you saw your totally secular public school friend doing the same thing who's Jewish, they have the same neshama. They're both Yidden. They're both held to a standard of excellence, right? One person might have worked on themselves a little bit more, but like you know, so how do we look at ourselves? You're letting yourself off the hook. Why? Because if you don't demand greatness of yourself, if I'm not that great, great people do great things. And I'm messing up all the time. All right, fine. So I'll just push it away. It's not a big deal. I'll use my rationalization to just let myself off the hook. If you demanded greatness of yourself, then you wouldn't do that. And you can't demand greatness unless you believe in your heart that you are great. Throw back to chapter 1. Go review that chapter. You have to recognize that there's greatness inside of you. You have to hold yourself to that standard. You could have done better. Again, not in a healthy way. We learned last chapter. You can't be depressed and take all that pressure and push yourself down. No, you have to be normal, healthy, and balanced in that. But you should be able to look at yourself and say, yeah, I'm a little disappointed. That was kind of weak on your end. You got to pick it up. You got to pick up the slack a little bit. One who adopts this attitude commits a grave sin. We've already discussed the responsibility that every single Jew has to work on himself and to help others in order to reveal and discover the greatness of the tzaddikim, the gedolim, and the geniuses that exist within the Jewish people, and how the Shekhinah itself cries out over those who fail to accept their responsibility. But is it unfair to hold the public school kid to the same standard? No, 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 no.
Like you were saying, like that's the same neshama. Yeah, obviously, but like you're saying, oh, I see
That
the public
that
school kid, I'm not
that
surprised. Why? Because I know
hold
their
on.
situation.
My point is, right, my point is not that you're going to have the same reaction. My point is that in reality, they're both held to the same standard, but when we start to look at certain people, that doesn't mean to not be empathetic in terms of where they came from. Obviously, we recognize why that's a reality, right? The question is it because, right, this Jew, right, are we complacent with it, right? Oh, they were raised in a secular family, they were raised eating at McDonald's all the time, they don't know any better. Fine. But that this Jew is not held to a standard of greatness, that eventually that this is something that's wrong, they should be able to move themselves past, never to mistreat them, but to recognize that they are just as significant in their neshama as the Rav of the shul. Their neshama is a chelik Elokai. It's not a lesser chelik Elokai. It's not lesser of God. No, it's equal. God, these are what a Jewish neshama is. And again, it's not about other people. I'm really talking about ourselves. It's when you look in the mirror, do you see yourself as someone who's, oh my God, I'm a special, unique human being. I'm a Jew. I'm a Yid. I'm someone who has a chelik Elokam imal. I have to hold myself to a higher standard. We just get used to it, right? Of course, there's an obvious difference between the two, but then we translate that difference and we become complacent in that. We look at it and we're just like, yeah, that's just the norm. That's everything. We shouldn't be okay with it, right? Should never mistreat a person, but in our heart, be like, oh, that's a great holy soul. We should expect of their greatness as well, that they can pull themselves out of it. That's my point. But it's
Yeah,
really,
but still,
yeah. And she's gone. All right, let us know when you're alive again.
like it's different.
Oh, we didn't hear any of that, or I didn't. Anyway,
Oh no. Okay, because I'm walking home now, so there's like no Wi-Fi. Wait.
Wait, like, wait, actually, or all right. So let chime back in when you have your Wi-Fi. But even if someone wishes to remain a simple Jew, right? So we talked about it, every Jew has a responsibility to grow. So let's say you say, okay, I just want to be average, right? I'm no rabbi, I'm no Rebbitzin. I'm just an average Jew. So I love this. He goes, how could it be that he forgot what a simple Jew actually is? By definition, I'm just a simple Jew. Do you know what a simple Jew is? Do you know what it means to be a simple Jew? Right? Like go back to chapter 1. You know what it is to be a simple Jew? How special and unique. Ashrecha Nor Yisrael. Indeed, when Hashem formed the Jewish people and he gave them the Torah, he made a stipulation within every Jew, from the wood chopper to the water carrier. Doesn't matter what type of a Jew you are. That's exactly what we got going on. So now, if you continually heed my words and keep my covenant, you will be a special treasured nation for me, more special than all the nations. Famously, that you'll be, for me, you'll be a treasured nation. Mikol Amin, from all the other nations, right? And V'atem tiyu mamleches kohanim, you'll be a kingdom of priests. For goy kadosh, you'll be a holy nation. Who's he talking to? He's talking to every single Jew, including you. Can't look in the mirror and say, oh, he's talking to everybody, but he's excluding me. Who's excluding you? You're part of the Jewish people. It's written in the Torah. Hashem is telling you exactly what he thinks about you. So you can't demand greatness from yourself, right? We don't want to get in the pattern of letting ourselves off the hook in ways that we shouldn't. That is the definition of a simple Jew, a kingdom of nobles and a holy nation. This is the condition that Hashem made with the Jewish people. Only if you live up to this condition do you deserve to be called a Jew. If not, chas v'shalom. Right? This is what it is to be a simple Jew. So you want to be an average. There are no average Jews. There are just none. Because every single Jew is of paramount importance to this world, and their soul is a chelik elokai. So there is no, I mean, there is a simple Jew, but by definition, simple Jew is greatness. So Jewish youth, here we go. Be bachim nar Yisrael. There are those of you who really want to refuse to be truly Jewish. God forbid, is there even one among you will not demand of himself and proclaim, I am the servant of Hashem with all my strength and intellect. I will even dedicate my entire life and soul to merit to be being called a Jew. Since none of you will refuse to demand this of yourself, it follows that you will not shy away from acknowledging your faults, however painful they may be, which is key word, and doing all that you can to rectify them, right? You have to come clean with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. Two things could be true at once. You can be unbelievable, holy, powerful, chelik elokai, elevated Jew, right? Mamleches Kohanim and God Kadosh, all those things. And yet you can have deficiencies. And I want to end with where I started. Hashem put those negative things inside you so that you can grow and become great. And when you start to look at yourself as those negative things, or you dismiss them subtly, right? You have these little micro deficiencies and you ignore them because they're not such a big deal. You're only causing harm for yourself. Hashem put them there. You don't be like, oh, those people who they think they need to be great. This is a common issue sometimes with advisors, right? Advisors are put in the role of being mentors and role models, and they have a very hard time being looked at in a sense that's less than. So they end up, right? Like one of the things we say in training is, have no problem saying, I don't know. Say, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not all knowing. I'm just a person. I'm a human being. That's not a deficiency, right? Just because you're in this role, you look at yourself like, I'm a Jew. How can I be struggling with anger or laziness? What are you talking about? Hashem put that in you. That's part of the plan. You're not those things. Those things were put in them. That's part of your mission. And you should own that. And that's what it is. A person has to be, again, the whole chapter is basically talking about your self-awareness. You need to be aware of your deficiencies because, as they say, Shingsu Kunyan in the art of war, I have no idea what his name is, but in the art of war, it says, you cannot defeat an enemy that you cannot define in war. If you don't know who you're fighting and you're not going to be able to, if you don't even know you're having a, if I don't know what I need to work on because I'm not paying attention to myself because I'm too embarrassed or ashamed or arrogant or stubborn to look at my own deficiencies, how on earth can I work on those things and make them better? If I can't sit down and articulate them out and say, what's wrong with me? That's what we need to do. That's what we're mandated to do, right? And if we can do that, then ultimately, right, where we are way far ahead of the game, way further along in our journey than a lot of our contemporaries. So that's the end of chapter 3. Chapter 4 is going to dive into what the Yesh Kodesh defines as the most destructive of these negative character traits, starting with laziness and being lethargic. thargy, which is a spiritual laziness. It's like you're doing the motions, but you're schlepping your feet. You don't actually have any enthusiasm about it. So we're going to begin next week to dive into those, and it's going to get a lot more practical in terms of how to attack these elements and work on ourselves more specifically. Okay, Ree, you had you were saying?
No idea. I just ran for my life to go home, and now I'm home. And I don't know.
That
I
was
think I
very
was
fast.
saying, yeah, I live. It was the building across the street from me. So
I think you were getting caught up. My example was to highlight how a person needs to look at themselves, right? I don't want to get caught up in the obvious reality of somebody who's worked to the stage where they're a community Rav versus a public school high school kid who was raised in a non-from family. That's semantics. I'm not speaking about looking at them as equals. They're obviously not equals. What I'm saying is that the neshama inside of themselves are both of absolute greatness. When you look at yourself and you say, I'm average, my neshama is average, then you'll never get past that stage in life. Because you'll be like, it's like when a Jew looks at me and they go, oh yeah, I don't keep Shabbos. And it's like, what is going on over there?
yeah. No, but it's like you're not that. It's like, yeah, you should be like, oh, this is so sad. Like they don't even know what they're missing, like that vibe. But it's not
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I'm not talking about how
whoa, you don't keep shot. Like it's not
no,
that.
no,
Like
no, no,
it's
no.
not
But
actually shocking. Like it's like, oh, it
but to
makes sense. And
yourself, but to yourself, right? If you look in the mirror and you'll be like, how many kids in your school, let's be real, how many kids in your school don't engage in the things that they're supposed to simply because it's like, oh, that's not for me.
a lot.
That's for the rabbi. That's for the religious people. That's for those who are like, and it's like, no, we all have a neshama. If you looked at yourself and you recognize that you're part of the Am Segula, the holy special treasured nation of Hashem, if you knew that about yourself, and that's what it is, we have to be able to look at ourselves with that level of honesty, recognize who we are, and hold ourselves to the standards in which we should be. Again, the only reason why people don't reach their greatness, not the only reason, sorry, so oversimplifying it, but what I think is the main reason is because a person takes themselves out of the game. People look at themselves with unfavorable eyes. They don't think that they're anything special, and it's that thought and belief in and of itself that prevents them from reaching their own greatness. I see it all the time with students. They stand in their own way. And it was just like, yo, can you get your insecurities out of your way so that you can go out and accomplish amazing things? I wish. And it's like, it's the only thing holding you back. You look at it, you're like, oh, I'm not capable of doing that. It's like, why? It's very sad. It's very sad. So that's when it comes to
Um,
especially us who care about working on ourselves and becoming great, we have to be responsible with the way that we look at the negative things that were placed inside of ourselves and not to identify as them,
got you.
but also to not let ourselves off the hook. Hold ourselves to that standard of greatness.
Is it still recording?
It is, but I could stop it now
Wait,
if
no,
you
no, don't stop it. I want to see if because Sarah Haya said she's gonna listen to it. Sarah Haya, if you hear me, send me a cupcake emoji.
that's really
Okay, that's it.
now you're gonna really test her.
Yeah. Okay, you can stop it now.
All right. Sure.
Bye.
Anybody else had any other questions or on the topic?
Yeah, I actually had a quick question. So, how do
Welcome
we,
Avia to the
yes,
chat. Thank you for being here, by the way.
I'm so glad to join. This has been an amazing time listening to this. I'm
Danielle
really
wants to
glad.
know who you are. Danielle, this is your roommate this weekend.
Hello.
Nice to meet
Thanks.
you.
Nice to meet you. So I had a question. How do we put ourselves in the type of mindset and type of space and like surround ourselves with the right type of people that we will be able to succeed and kind of become a better version of ourselves?
Your environment is a tool that you can leverage for that. Right. So if in again, friendships and environments, you should be around people who have similar values to you, people who value the same things, right? So if you're very growth oriented and you care about that stuff, by the way, it's interesting. I've spoken to several Israelis, mifkashim after TJ, who like they're having a hard time in their friend group because their values are a little bit off. If you're very gung ho about growing and becoming a better person, but all of your friends, right, who you grew up, even if you grew up with, and they don't have those same values. They don't care. They're prioritizing fun, right? You're gonna have, of course, it's not gonna help your cause, right? If you do surround yourself and you find those people who care about the same values that you do, that'll help bolster you. That will be a tremendous support system. So it's not so much how, it's I'm saying we understand the process. The question is can we do that? It could be a little awkward if you were best friends with someone, really close with someone, but you see in high school, friend groups change. Sometimes people have different priorities and they go in different ways. If you can be you look around and you say like, I really like that person and that girl is very growth oriented. I think I could benefit from a friendship. Then you go for it. And it'll just
For
help.
sure. For sure. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Environment
Also,
is like 9/10 of the battle usually.
it doesn't end so well if like you're just like you're trying to like be around growth oriented people, but like majority of your environment isn't like that. You also can't like it could be more harmful to like separate yourself completely and then end up like
No, that right. But I mean, that was yesterday's share. You got to be balanced, right? It's
yeah.
people are
100%.
like, oh, I want to cut out the toxic. So like they just drop half their friend group. And it's like, that's not healthy or normal. Like who does that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there has to be a system in place. You can't just act like a behemoth. There's covered abrios.
True.
To act
True.
like a
True.
normal
True.
person. But ultimately, every new chapter provides those different opportunities, right? When you get to, let's say you're going to get to seminary next year, or you're going to go to college, right? Now you're making new friends. Don't get very close to people who don't share the same values as you, because you're going to be setting yourself up. If you're going to meet someone who's just gonna be like, yeah, football every Saturday, it's like, and you're like, I don't want to do that. So then don't, like try to find the people in your life, surround yourself with the people in your life that have similar values to you, and it'll just do worlds for you. They'll celebrate and champion when you want to do good things, and they'll help you support you, and vice versa. My whole friend group literally split in two. There were half of us who were like, we want to, move on and get married eventually and have families. And the other ones were like, yeah, we want to just be going to music festivals for the all of eternity. And we split.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So
I definitely hear that message. I feel like also a lot of the times we surround ourselves with certain people and then expect a certain outcome to come from it, like a positive one. And those people just don't have the same values as us. So I think it's just
Yeah,
important
most
to stay.
friendships in high school when you're a kid, most friendships are formed out of convenience or similar interests, right? Like, oh, we both like this band, or we both like smoking pot. Like, friendships are formed for all the wrong reasons. It's convenient. There was the person sitting right there. They were my neighbor. It's not a value-based system. And then it becomes complicated because you're like, you're right now I have to readjust who I'm friends with. But that's what maturing is. When you're younger, it's convenience. Yitzi's friends with the kids in his grade. Why? Because he sees them all the time. Now, if they grow up to have people who are like become a negative influence, then you have to make that adjustment. And that's a process that's happening throughout all of high school. And that's why you see people are, oh, I'm best friends with her today. I'm not tomorrow. So there is a system there, but it's not. Judaism does not. In the Kana L'Chol Chaver, it says in Pirkei Avos that you should acquire the friend. You don't just become friends with people out of convenience because, oh, we have similar interest. Who here loves, this? And then, okay, now we're friends. And the glue of our friendship is this meaningless, music genre. Like, that's not going to endure, you know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I'll end the recording and I'll hang out for a few minutes. Oh, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. And